Ah, yes, I love that. I always love when I'm teaching my class and we start talking about sampling. And there's always a piano there. It's not very good for sampling, but for copyright stuff, it's good that we start doing the sampling thing, and it's a good way to talk about sampling as opposed to replays. But everybody, I mean, for all the articles that have been written in all of the guitar player magazines, electronic, there's still that thing, 4 bars is okay. I mean, I keep asking, I say, so suppose we did blah, blah, blah. Every semester, some kid will say, well, 4 bars is okay, right? No, wrong. It might be okay, depending on what 4 bars it is, but if it's a sample, and if you're in the 6th Circuit, nothing's okay, okay? So sampling, basically, as opposed to replaying something, is, as everybody out there probably knows by now, but maybe not, is that you actually incorporate in your own recording a recording that somebody else made. Now, typically, in today's world, it's a digital incorporation, but it doesn't have to be. If you take somebody's recording, somebody, at least since 1972 in the United States, owns the sound recording. And if the performance that's performed in the sound recording is of a composition that's not in the public domain, somebody owns the rights in the composition. So technically, you got to get rights from both those people if you're going to do that. And back in the really glory days back when it was go-go in DC and sampling was something that only a few people had heard about, very much in the underground. People just put their stuff on the records and didn't worry about it, didn't care at all. And in fact, when those acts started getting signed to labels, I can remember having conversations with some of these artists. They said, "Oh man, it's not a problem, dude. I just sampled DJ Jive Man, and he's a good buddy, and he said it's okay." And it's like, isn't DJ Jive Man signed to Universal? Yeah, well, so what? No, Universal owns that, not DJ Jive Man. You got to go who owns the sound recording copyright. You got to worry about the publishing stuff. So people still didn't care because it was all about street cred. You had to have the samples, and even though you could replay it and you could add fake surface noise on it, and you could do all kinds of things to make it sound like it was sampled, you had to have the street cred. Then people started getting the royalty statements, and they discovered that on some of those records, not only were they losing on the mechanical side, that is the payments for the compositions. If they thought they wrote the song, but they'd sample from 3 or 4 different people. Not only were they not getting any mechanical, they were paying out of their pocket because they were essentially paying for 4 copyrights on the thing. And they looked at the record royalties, and they made the mistake of sampling Prince, or they sampled some Motown stuff, or they sampled Sting, or the Police actually in that particular case, and they end up giving away their record royalties besides. I find a whole lot of artists now are into the replay mode, and then running it through Groovalizer or Groovalicious, whichever software they use to get it to sound like it's a sample, because it was becoming an economic problem for them. And for a while there, those were the only people that were actually selling records in the music business, so it actually mattered for them. The whole idea, though, I think that's interesting now, that's sort of the next step along from that, is mashups. This whole idea of, we're going to take a couple different recordings, or 3 or 4 different recordings, or a recording in a movie, and we're going to digitally superimpose them on each other and make something new that incorporates both those things, which is the kind of thing that has been done in real time for a long time. I mean, I don't know if you may remember doing this because we're of that age, but there were people who would put the Wizard of Oz on, and then they would put on Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, and if you started them at the right time, and if you were under the influence, so it's said, of the right substances, you could actually see an amazing coherence of changes in the music and changes. And if you're doing it in real time, or as the music supervisors like to say, dropping the needle, you can do that. It's not a problem. Performance, and if you're in a venue to the public, then performance license will cover that, because you're not really synchronizing, you're just dropping the needle. But you start making recordings of that stuff, and now you're synchronizing, now you're putting stuff together, now you're making a derivative work out of it, and now you got to deal with having to get licenses. And the people who do it on the audio side, they're used to the idea that, hey, if I use a song, I can get compulsory licenses. Forget that compulsory licenses don't work if you change the character of the composition you're using. So if you sample it and put it into another song, you change the character. If you do a mashup, you change the character. If you do a medley, you change the character. And so they're thinking, big deal, I'll deal with it after the fact. Except after the fact means that the person who owns the rights can say, no, you can't do it at all. Or worse yet, Yeah, you can do it. $10 billion up front against a $5 per unit royalty. And I've actually seen holdups like that. And, that's why every once in a while, when you go buy, an edition of that record, or at a few months or maybe even a year after it's come out the first time, there'll be different songs on the record because you just can't economically keep that track on there. And again, I have noticed that people are more aware of the fact that there are issues raised by sampling. And the problem isn't that they're not aware of the issues. The problem is the information out there has not kept, the quality information has not kept up with the interest. So that even though people know that there's a problem, they still think that 4 bars is okay. And they still think that as long as the guy who did the record told me it was okay, it's fine. And that's a problem. And that's, again, it's people, the sources to find out this information, they're everywhere. You don't have to go to a music industry program. Not that they shouldn't go to those programs because they're great, but even if you can't afford it, or even if you're older than that, you don't want to go back and hang around with people with tattoos and piercings, you can still find this stuff out because every magazine out there has somebody writing about the legal aspects of guitar playing, keyboard playing, music, electronic music, whatever it is. And by and large, most of those people, whatever their qualities as transactional attorneys may be, and I've dealt with some of them, haven't dealt with other ones, the articles they write, there aren't a whole lot of egregious factual errors. And there's no reason to not know that stuff. And if you're at a level where you got a manager, and God forbid an attorney, then there's a huge problem. The fact that people continue to make those mistakes remains astonishing to me. It's either just a sort of, I don't care attitude, or it's just, total recklessness. Maybe a little bit of both.